See if it's working, see if it's on. Yeah, it is. Okay. I'm going to have to redo it. I don't know how many times. Yeah, look at that there. Still isn't quite right, I don't think. Okay, that's my next report. First of all, item of business. Net neutrality update. I did a report a while back that had quite a few hits on it. It had to do with net neutrality. You know, and what all my paranoid fears about everything that I've seen happen up till now, where it looked like an awful lot of censorship going on. You know, I mean, first you had, like I say, you had, we had the corporate media. You had Ross Perot got in there. You know, he was going to get in there and take the power base away from the 1%. You know, campaign finance reform and several other things to stop the corruption in the government. Well, you know, they kept him out. Well, there was still a movement going on after that had to do with campaign finance reform. And one of the people in Congress said that the lobbyists had been in there, the corporates had been in there, with giving a bunch of campaign money and wanting to take over all the radio stations, TV stations, and newspapers, and the three major networks. And they said the reason, and they lobbied the government, and the congressman said the reason they told him was they wanted to shut up independent voices. In other words, stop the movement to give the power base back to the 99% again, which means get rid of campaign finance corruption, get rid of the revolving door, and straighten out the gerrymandering. You know, gerrymandering, I don't say much about it. Mitch McConnell, you know, he's the kingpin of campaign finance corruption. And what he does, he'll like to get a trailer park. And, you know, I had a friend that lived in a trailer, nothing against trailer parks. You get a trailer park, and they draw a circle around it. And then he'll get another trailer park and draw a circle around that, and that's his district, basically. You know, 3 or 4 trailer parks. So he gets in every damn time because there's no one educated or been to college enough to know better than to put him in there. And that's why he stays in. You can't get rid of him. Well, but that's how they do it. You know, that's the gerrymandering problem. Okay. Well, anyway, it looked like, you know, there was also a movement. They got rid of Bill O'Reilly, and he was talking about, you know, closing the borders up. You know, they profit. Like I say, the corporates profit from open borders. They have the cheap labor. They want the borders open. We've been trying to close the borders since 1980. They never can close them. Everything fails time after time because of campaign money. Comes in and seizes up Congress. They keep closing them. So they knocked off O'Reilly, and there was one report on YouTube, like through the grapevine on YouTube or whatever, and there was verified that George Soros organized the sponsored pullout of Bill O'Reilly. Wouldn't surprise me. Okay, well anyway, they got rid of O'Reilly. He had great big ratings. Well, they've been trying to shut down Hannity after that, and there was some, anyway, and then my theory was that Agit Pie was basically there to shut up YouTube. I don't know whether it's the case or not, but it looks like YouTube is being censored. I've noticed ever since last Wednesday night, you know, they used to, you'd put a song on YouTube or a political report or whatever you put on YouTube, you would, they'd have under your name, they'd have other videos you had. Well, ever since Wednesday night, I've noticed there's been, with the algorithms that are being tampered with, because ever since Wednesday night, they've had about 8 videos under mine, and one of them's a Disney Corporation, one of them's a Marvel Corporation, and something else. And that's all they have. They won't relay your songs anymore. And I noticed under, I noticed Figueroado's, they had the same thing. Humanist Report, the same thing under that. I don't know whether he's noticed it or not. But you know, I mean, it may be, albeit it's a small amount, but it's still censorship. You know, I mean, the walls are closing in on us. And there's other things that concern me too with this censorship of YouTube. You had Alex Jones, you know, and first you think most people watch Alex Jones, they think, well, he's just crazy, you know, 1-800-NUTCAKE. You know, he's lying about everything. They go, well, you know, what's wrong getting rid of him? Well, it turns out, actually, I just heard a report on Fox News that Time Warner Corporation was behind knocking him off, which means, you know, like I say, they want open borders. And what does Alex Jones do? He rallies the right. That means he gets everybody riled up that's on the right. They get out and vote. That's probably why they knocked him off. They said that Time Warner and the CNN were behind knocking him off of YouTube. So, well, if that's the case, and I don't have any reason to doubt it, I would say that YouTube is being censored, and that's reason for people to be worried about it. So those two developments worry me. Like I say, I mean, even if you were on the hard left, it's a concern if they knocked Alex Jones off because it is a corporate interest and someone, you know, getting on YouTube and shutting somebody up because of a corporate interest, which happen to be open borders, and they don't want Trump, they want to impeach him, they don't want his approval rating going up. And Alex Jones had awfully big ratings, and so did O'Reilly, and so if you got big ratings on YouTube, what does that mean for the future? I don't know, but it looks like the walls are closing in. It may be nothing, but it worries me. And it's enough of a worry to me that I thought I should bring it out. Okay, and the second problem I have, second item of business, I had a cyberbully, you know, which I don't think is a real big problem. Not exactly, but, you know, ordinarily I would ignore a cyberbully, but I don't have enough commentary on my videos, really. You know, and this is the only commentary I've had. A cyberbully called me a communist. And he's put a whole bunch of, like, minuses on one of my songs and a whole bunch of other stuff. Political reports, a whole bunch of negatives. And so I think it might be worth addressing. It's fodder for, you know, something to talk about, for a debate. It makes a debate anyway. But anyway, Melania Trump was talking about the cyberbullying, and I was hoping, you know, Melania Trump needs to protect me from this cyberbully. Okay, but anyway, the thing, okay, I guess sit everything. I was listening to KMA one night. I think the problem with people that, you know, well, call me a communist because I supported the left. You know, it's like anything on the left, anything they disagree with, that's their definition of communism. Anything I disagree with, basically. I listened to KMA one night, that was kind of interesting. It was a radio talk show. And it came on Sunday night a long time ago, and some guy called up, and he goes, my granddaddy was a Republican. My daddy was a Republican. I'm a Republican. If you are not a Republican, you are communist. And then the guy, the host, you know, the host of the show, the radio said something, that's all you're going to say, and you're not going to call back when you have something worth listening to. Something like that, hung up on him. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was kind of funny at the time, but I think a lot of times when people knock stuff on the left, anybody that knocks stuff on the left, you know, and anything they don't agree with is communist. The trouble with doing that, basically, it means they're dogmatic. And what we learned in college was that dogmatic belief is a function of education, where education is inversely proportional to dogmatic belief. It's dogmatic, you know, it's like y equals m over x, where y increases, x decreases. So if you have the more education you have, the more your dogmatic belief decreases. So well, essentially it's ignorance. And what dogmatic belief means, well, basically that, like with a war, you'll argue about the war is a good thing even when there's a lot of evidence right in front of you that's not. Just because you like the president that started it, or just because you like the president that kept it going. Where you won't look at facts. I mean, take the Iraq War, people are dogmatic. I mean, you had Norman Schwarzkopf, who worked for H.W. Bush, who had a 165 IQ, that thought the Iraq War was a mistake. Colin Powell quit. And actually, there were people where I used to work at Domino's, Dennis, who agreed with me on that. He said, why do you think Colin Powell quit? He knew the Iraq War was a mistake. You had Donald Trump said he did support, he supported it at first, and then he later changed his mind, didn't support the Iraq War. Sanders didn't support it, so hardly anybody thinks it was a good thing anymore. Nobody, you know, supports the Iraq War. But someone that's dogmatic will argue for the war even when the evidence is right in front of them that it was a mistake. That's what dogmatic means. It's like, for example, you have Einstein's theory of relativity. We were arguing about this once at my house, and let's see, where's that at? Einstein's theory of relativity, which has to do with, you know, like what they say, a light wave, you walk towards the light wave, and a light wave will always pass you at the same rate. It's like you have, like a train, and two lightning strikes. Well, a person will be standing by the train. The person standing by the train will see the two lightning strikes simultaneously. Lightning strikes. Well, the person on the train will see it as two separate strikes, because it has to do with the one person was on the train is moving away from the light beam, while the other one's coming towards him. So he sees the two separate strikes. And so, and his theory was, I think that the faster you go, let's see, the light beam always hits you at the same rate, so time slows down to compensate. I'm not sure on that. But anyway, they say that he says that the absolute speed of the universe, you know, the speed of light is the absolute speed of the universe. You can't exceed it. Well, anyway, Stanley Kubrick got on there, and, you know, he was in 2001 Space Odyssey. He said, I have a little trouble believing that. That sounds like a dogmatic scientific rule. Well, Kubrick's Jewish. They're both Jewish, Einstein and Kubrick both. Whether that's significant, I don't know. But he said he thought, you know, there's an awful lot of dogmatic scientific rules we've had previously. They changed. Well, one thing Einstein said, he thought that the expanding universe, he thought it was the universe was stagnant, and you start at one point, walk all the way through the universe, you end up where you started. But they said later that they thought it was expanding, and he admitted he was wrong about that. But anyway, if you'll bring up that, you know, and argue with people about light being the absolute speed, some people get real mad. They'll get real red-faced and start yelling at you. And usually that means they're dogmatic, which means they don't want to look at reality. They don't ever question things. You know, they think Einstein knew everything and Einstein's God. Well, the trouble with doing that, when it's in politics, you're not looking at reality. You're distorting things. It's an illusion. And if you want to fix a political system, you can't have this dogmatic belief going on. And that's why, you know, someone calls me a communist. And I know it's just dogmatic hot gas. There's no way I'm going to listen to it, because I'm a lot smarter than that, for one thing. But you can't fix the government. If everybody's dogmatic, you can't fix things that are wrong with it. It gets in the way. And there's several reasons you don't. You know, if they always say the left is communist, what's the trouble with that? You have, and some people say, well, the right's the one that upholds the Constitution. Actually, that's not true. You know, both parties, it's the power struggle between the two parties, the right and the left, that uphold the Constitution. It's the power struggle between the right and the left that makes the capitalist system work right, and why you have real capitalism versus crony capitalism, which we have now. And it's the right and the left and the power struggle between the two to protect civil rights. For example, you take the Constitution, you have, for example, you know, the gun rights. Okay, well, the right upholds the Constitution pretty much on gun rights, you know, where the left doesn't. The left violates it. But then you have the First Amendment, which actually the left does a lot more to protect the First Amendment than the right does. And you don't have the First Amendment otherwise. And which would mean things like, for example, net neutrality, for one thing. If you don't have the First Amendment, you don't have democracy. You don't have your one man, one vote. You don't, and if you have corporations that own all the media, you don't really have the First Amendment. Everything's filtered. It's filtered so the corporation, you know, it's biased on their, you know, like the way CNN is. You know, there's a conflict of interest they aren't telling you. There's a hidden agenda. But anyway, you have to have the, you know, the left and laws that stop, you know, that protect the media from someone owning it and destroying the, you know, and filtering and censoring it. And that's why you need net neutrality, and that takes the leftists to uphold those things. The other thing is civil rights. The right won't protect civil rights. You have a black guy get shot, they won't do anything about it. They put their head in the sand. They're wonderful police. That's what I mean, dogmatic beliefs. The right tends to be dogmatic, the hard right especially. And you need the left to counteract that with civil rights. And, you know, like our constitutional rights, they ask you for your ID when they don't have any right to. You know, well, that comes under the Declaration of Independence, when it talks about the pursuit of happiness, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. They're both in there. It has to do with your civil rights, have to do with your freedom. And if the government becomes destructive of these ends, it's time to throw off such government. So obviously you need the left there. And you need, the capitalist system doesn't work unless you have the left there. And you call it communist, you know, antitrust laws, you call them communist. Take, for example, you have like several people who have cancer. One lady was like, she had cancer on her forehead. You know, I don't know, what do you call that, the cancer of the skin, melanoma or something like that. Anyway, the melanoma fell off in the sink. You had another man who had colon cancer, and he was at a point where he's on his deathbed, and his breathing was way down. The paramedics came in and saved him. You know, I had to work on him several times because he was about his very end of his life, what it appeared to be. Turned out he got well, and he was in the bowling alley bowling after that. And they had another one just recently. Of course, these could be made up. As far as I know, they weren't. They're on the news. The other one was someone just recently survived AIDS. The point I'm trying to make, but no one else has, the point I'm trying to make, there's probably the cure to cancer, all these cancers probably lies in these people's, something in their body that's protecting them from cancer, is counteracting it. If you don't have capitalism, you're never going to find out what does that. Because, and that means if you don't have antitrust laws on hospitals, if you don't stop hospital mergers, if you have laws against price fixing, if you stop, what happens with hospital mergers? You know, everybody gets laid off. That's the first thing that happens. You don't have state-of-the-art equipment because there's no incentive to advance, and the prices go way out the roof. So you don't have, like I say, you can't compete on the international market. Well, that's making it more like the Soviet system. So that's where you need the left, basically, and your probability of discovering what these are that are fighting these cancers. You aren't going to have it because there's no hospital incentive to compete with that other hospital. The AMA has they're all in a big vacuum, and they have all that campaign money. And that's why there's no competition in the AMA. And so there's no incentive to solve these, cancers, figure out what's causing them. And I guess that's, let's see. But anyway, it shows how the left protects you from, in 1945 they had a law that they couldn't have antitrust laws on hospitals. You can't get that law repealed with the campaign finance system the way it is. And the point I'm trying to make there, I know what I was going to say. W. Bush, he's the one that put, two people in the Supreme Court to support campaign finance corruption. He's the one that did it. And he did it to protect his oil business. Because that way, the lobbyists come in with campaign money. And so they made the campaign finance corruption worse. You have all these super PACs. Well, actually, he turned the capitalist system into a communist system is what he did. So what is W. Bush? Pretty much a communist. He was on that case. And that's what I mean. If some cyberbully comes in there that likes Bush and calls me a communist, well, look who he voted for. Somebody basically turned the country communist. And that's what I mean. That's why you need both parties. He moved it that direction. He didn't really turn it communist, but he moved it that direction. And but that's why you need, that's why you need the left. And the other thing, meeting the needs of the people too. Government doesn't meet the needs of the people without the power struggle between the left and the right. And even Gerald Ford said that you have to have a party system. You have to have both the left and the right to protect the government, essentially, and meet the needs of the people. And I agree with Ford on that. If you didn't have, if you eliminated the left, you'd have a problem. And so it's not, if they start calling everybody on the left a communist, you don't solve problems. You don't fix things. If the government doesn't work right, you won't even acknowledge that it needs fixed. You won't acknowledge that there's corruption in the government. You put your head in the sand. It's like Joe Walsh said, the system's broken, we've all got our head in the sand. And it's like, you notice when the rock star types, the motorcyclists tend to hate authority. That was in USA Today. And it seems like the people that hate authority tend to be good at politics and understanding what's wrong with it. Did you notice the ones that stood up for the Dixie Chicks were the rock stars? They were the Grammy people. You notice the dramatic arts people wouldn't let Michael Moore talk. They shut him up. But the dramatic arts people stood up for the Dixie Chicks because they were probably a little smarter and understand politics and knew the Dixie Chicks were right in line with Norman Schwarzkopf, who had a 165 IQ and was a general and worked for H.W. Bush. So the Dixie Chicks were a little smarter than these other people. And apparently a little smarter than dramatic arts people. But that's what I'm saying. And people like Joe Walsh, I think they understand politics, and people that ride motorcycles, because essentially that's what Jefferson was a rebel, and so was Thomas Paine, and a lot of the others. And he was going to argue that those people don't understand political systems. Jefferson, he's pretty smart. But I'm saying that I think that the rock star types and the motorcycle types tend to be smarter when it comes to that than a lot of the rest of the population, the people that are on the hard right. And that's why I take a centrist position. That way I make the left mad half the time, and I make the right mad half the time. But if people don't like, they think I'm communist, what you need to do is go to YouTube and argue with me. And get your side of it. Why you think what I'm saying is communist. Okay. Basically what dogmatic means, the human mind is fallible. That means, that's what it's saying in the Bible, where it says, having no other gods before God, is one of the Ten Commandments. And there's too many Baptists I run into all the time. It's like they've never read the Ten Commandments. Or the preachers seem to be pretty smart, most of them. I've heard some Baptist preachers that are pretty smart, but the congregation doesn't get it. But basically, it's telling you not to be dogmatic, that the human mind is fallible, only God is God. The bush isn't God, the war isn't God, the country isn't God. The only thing is, only God is God. And that means, if you're talking about the Vietnam War and you're banging your fist on the table and you get up and down yelling because somebody's criticizing it, that's dogmatic. And the Bible tells you not to be dogmatic. You call someone on the left a communist, that's dogmatic. Okay, the other thing I was going to say, and if you don't agree, go to YouTube and argue that, but that's my opinion. The other thing, the wall and Time Warner. I came out with the wall and Trump. I support Trump's wall. I want him to get it through. The Congress keeps saying, well, he's going around, he's circumventing Congress. And that's going to cause a whole lot of trouble. The Congress is the one causing the trouble. So every president that gets in uses the executive, because Congress, like I say, is seized up with campaign money. And that congressman that criticized him, I bet if he was taking $27 a piece the way Sanders is, we wouldn't have a screwed up Congress. We'd have a Congress that worked, that wasn't all on the periphery. Everything's sucked to the periphery and all seized up. And it's the campaign money doing it. Well, that's why Trump had to use the executive power. He didn't have any choice. That's why Obama had to use it. Every president gets in has to use it because the government's all seized up. It doesn't work. The system's broken. And the first congressman to knock Trump for trying to circumvent it is the first one that's in bed with campaign money, and it's the first one causing all the trouble. Okay. Anyway, you had the Time Warner, Kamala Harris, #1 contributor, campaign money, Kamala Harris, Time Warner. What does that tell you? That's probably why Nancy Pelosi, when the guy came, the border security came up and gave a speech on why we need a physical wall, and the only thing that'll keep, our border secure is a physical wall. And she turned her head, wouldn't even listen to him, tried to shut him up. Well, her number one supporter is probably Time Warner, and Time Warner profits off of cheap labor. That's why they knock Trump all the time. That's why you don't hear anything good about putting that wall in there. You don't hear anything about, a Mexican comes up here, shoots somebody, he goes back to Mexico. He tries to rack up how many people he can murder, how many people he can rape. He comes up here, goes to Mexico, they can't get him, comes back here, shoots another one, goes back to Mexico, can't get him. Waits a while, goes back up, shoots another one, just racks it up. I can see how many I can kill and get away with. That's called chaos. Time Warner won't tell you that. Well, they want cheap labor. They want that wall in there. That's why they're trying to knock Trump off. And that's why the Democrats were all lined up against Trump, because they're all getting money from Nancy Pelosi, or she's the one helping them fundraise. They're all lined up behind her, and she's getting her money from Time Warner. Well, Kamala Harris is, and she wants open borders. Time Warner, #1 contributor. That's another problem. Anyway, and so what happens? Like I say, the corporates, they get the cheap labor, wages go way down, they profit, make big money to the detriment of the working class. Trump needed to drive that point home. He didn't drive it home very well. That's why I hope Trump gets his wall. It's like I said before, you had the people that wanted the DACA bill. A majority, a big high majority, 87%, whatever it was. He wanted the people that wanted to stop chain migration. He wanted people that limited migration. He wanted to stop the lottery system. They were all a majority, every darn one of them. The only thing was the wall, physical wall, there was 45%, 55 didn't want it. But all the rest of those things, everybody wanted. Well, all of those, they lost all of those things. The big losers, all those people, the Democrats, Republicans, and people supporting them on both sides, you know the big winner was Time Warner. And they won every dime. Okay, I guess I better quit because I probably ran over time. So I gotta, I don't know, do it in segments, I guess. But anyway, that's, you know, that's my report up till, and I'll do another one to finish it. And thanks for watching.